straight. Yeah, I guess I am, right?
As far as I can tell.
Yeah.
You never made a move on me.
Well, just because we're never in the same room. All right, everyone, warm up those brains. It's time for the Get More Smarter podcast. This one here is episode 249. I'm Jason Bain.
I'm Ian Silveria. This week on the Get More Smarter podcast, the Colorado state budget got $1 billion cut. Again, thanks to Gabe Evans, Jeff Hurd, and the rest of the Republicans Colorado sends to Washington. And their state legislative mini-minority counterparts beclowned themselves over and over again the whole time. We break down the outcome of the recently concluded special session. Then, friend of the pod, Governor Jared Polis, has some choice words for somehow HHS Secretary RFK Junior. And frankly, they're words neither us nor any other major Democrat in Colorado would ever use. And finally, can a Democrat win Colorado's second most Republican congressional district? Well, if one can, it just might be our guest today. Jessica Killin joins us from Colorado Springs to talk about how she plans to win the 5th district in 2026. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest today, Jessica Killin, Democratic candidate for Colorado's 5th congressional district, a proud 4th-generation Coloradan. Jessica is a devoted mother, Army veteran, and public servant running for Colorado's 5th congressional district to restore competence, courage, and character to Washington, something they are in dire need of. Raised in Colorado Springs by public school educators, Jessica learned the value of hard work and public service. She served as a captain and paratrooper in the U.S. Army, leading soldiers overseas and participating in peacekeeping missions. She has since dedicated her career to improving the livelihoods of all Americans, including over a decade at USAA, where she worked to protect military families during the 2008 financial crisis, streamlined VA home loans, and helped service members avoid predatory lenders. She then returned to public service in leadership roles on Capitol Hill and the White House, which we will get into very shortly here. Jessica Killin, welcome to the Get More Smarter podcast.
Thanks. That's a nice intro. I think somebody on my team wrote that.
They did.
Nice
and they did a fine job. I literally only edited like 2 things. But before we get into like the campaign and the nuts and bolts of the political stuff here, just take a few minutes to like fill in those blanks. Tell us about yourself, your career, your connection to Colorado Springs, and why you're running for Congress.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. I am, as the statement says, a 4th-generation Coloradan on both sides, actually. So lots of aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, everyone running around this. Pretty much, I think, have connections in every district in the state. Was born in La Jara, which if you don't know where that is, that's okay. It's way south of Alamosa. And then my parents.
Wait, there's a south of Alamosa?
Yeah.
It's La Jara.
La Jara, yeah.
And south. Is it further south than Antonito?
That's a good question. I'd have to look now on a map. So my parents were public school educators, as you noted. My parents were both teachers. My dad ended up getting his master's, and so we came here to Colorado Springs for him for his first principalship. He was the principal of Falcon Middle School.
Oh, cool.
I was in elementary school at the time, so basically grew up here. Elementary school, middle school, and then graduated from Falcon High School on the east side of Colorado Springs, sort of out Powers and Barnes. So not from a military family, not an Army brat, but grew up in a community just surrounded by, at the time, now there are five major military posts here in Colorado Springs. At the time, it was the Air Force Academy, Peterson, then Air Force Base, and NORAD Space Command. We've since then, and Fort Carson. And then they've added Schriever since then, and then NORAD has changed over to Space Command. Anyway, because I was surrounded by all these military and veterans families, when my parents said, hey, we don't have any money for college, what do you think? I got an Army ROTC scholarship and went to college on an Army ROTC scholarship, and then served, as you noted, overseas most of the time. I was at Fort Bragg for a little bit. I am a paratrooper, went to Fort Benning, Georgia for that, but did most of my work overseas, first as part of Operation Joint Endeavor, Joint Guard. So I'm a pre-9/11 vet, doing peacekeeping operations and supporting peacekeeping operations in the Balkans. And then as an MP, we were doing maneuver and mobility support from Hungary to Bosnia. And then a huge part of the work I did also then was in NATO expansion. It's interesting. This was a time when people in Europe still remembered the Marshall Plan, still remembered and noted the importance of American diplomacy and soft power, and how that, first of all, helps create global stability, which I also believe helps protect our own national security. It's an out of I don't think I'm quite in touch with the current view of the Trump administration on that, but I do think that these are critical components to our own national security. And one of the things we were doing when I was there is expanding NATO. And we expanded NATO to include Poland while I was there. And then we did a bunch of work on some other Eastern Bloc nations, Latvia, Slovakia, which were all then admitted into NATO in 2004, notably not Ukraine. So what has happened in Ukraine is certainly near and dear to my heart. Then returned to the States. Was going to go to CU Boulder Law School, but got into Georgetown. And the rule of thumb then was to go to the best law school you get into. So I went to Georgetown, which is how
the rule of thumb now to go to the worst one? Did that change?
I just think that people have gotten realistic about how much law school costs, and maybe it's not always worth it. I don't know. But so I went to Georgetown and then practiced law. And then I've spent half of my career in the private sector. So 3 years at a law firm. And then 10 years at USAA. I spent a decade there. I started there right before the financial crisis. And so, as you noted, worked a lot, used some of the skills and some of the things I learned in the Army. Like one of my biggest issues was bounce checks, that my soldiers had bounce checks. And so started working through financial products that would help establish credit for young service members who needed it's hard to establish credit when you don't make much money. And so new payday lending alternatives and cards that would help them develop a credit line. Also helping streamline the VA home loan system, and worked a lot with the VA and to improve the VA home loan process then. And then, just worked through providing financial services products for veterans and service members throughout that time. Then during Trump 1.0, was thinking about coming home and met my now husband, and he was in DC, so stayed there a little longer, but did some jobs that I think really also were critical to me making this decision, and also critical to, I think, what will be my success as a congressional candidate and also as a member of Congress. I was a chief of staff for several members of the House of Representatives in the Donna Shalala in the 116th Congress. I was notably also on the Capitol Hill and working as a chief on January 6th. And I was in the moment, realized like I'd never thought in a million years, as someone who's a patriot and I care deeply about my country, that I'd see one branch of government essentially attacking another branch of government. But went through all that. Then I was chief of staff for Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, who...
Oh, cool. I didn't know that. Yeah. She rules.
Yeah, who was in a also very challenging district. And so I think that's where I learned and began to understand how to operate in a district like the one I'm running in my home district. And also just in how effective you can be in a district like this, like mine. And then I went on to go work for Doug Emhoff and be his chief of staff in the last year and a half of the administration, and left there on the 20th of January. So why I'm running? First and foremost, because I'm a patriot and I love my country. And I think we can do better. I think Congress can do better. I care deeply about Article 1, and I feel that Congress and Jeff Crank in particular are ceding their power and not putting a check on the administration or on the executive branch in a way that they should. They are not being responsible and being good stewards of taxpayer dollars. And I know how Congress can and should work, and that it should work better for people. It's called the House of Representatives for a reason. You're supposed to fucking represent the people that elected you. And he's not doing that. And I really believe I've watched this district change over the years. When I was growing up in this district, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, like this was 6 counties. It's now 1 county.
Right.
And that's because of the massive change that has happened in this district. And I've been out in the community. I'm talking to people. I'm telling you, people around Colorado may not know that this district is ripe for change. Everyone in Colorado Springs knows. Everyone in El Paso County knows.
But
yeah,
before we continue, can I confirm, have you seen Jeff Crank in person? I have not yet met someone else who has.
Crazily, you know who has? My husband.
Okay,
so he does exist.
There's at least one degree of confirmation.
Sighting in Washington, D.C., not in Colorado, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been out there a lot, and I've never seen him. I've run into the rest of the delegation, though. I want to talk a little bit about your work with the second gentleman, who I just briefly was extraordinarily kind to me. The second gentleman is, among other things, sort of like the spouse boss. So
Yeah.
like when you're a congressional spouse, like he is your guy and he
Yeah,
interfaces in his office, was really supportive. He grew up 2 towns away from me in Manalapan, New Jersey.
Yeah,
And
I heard that you told me
yeah,
that. That's right. Yeah.
we vibed on that. But so you were chief of staff to
Yeah.
the second gentleman during some pretty intense times. What did you learn from your time in the White House or the Naval Observatory? I don't know where you actually met.
I worked at the White House. Yeah.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Any
Yeah.
stories from your time with Mr. Emhoff that you can share with us to get a better sense of what that job was like and how it prepared you for a run for Congress?
You know, I will give the SG, Mr. Emhoff, a lot of credit. He was the first ever male spouse,
Yeah.
and the first ever Jewish principal in the White House.
Right.
And he took it very seriously. And when I first started with him, I thought I was going to be working. He developed his platform, and anti-Semitism was one of those things. Gender equity was another. And but I started there in late August, early September of 2023. And so I thought I was going to be mostly working on gender equity work. But then, of course, October 7th happened. This was a very serious issue after October 7th, and especially on college campuses. And it's something that I'm very proud of, the work that we did to combat anti-Semitism and hate generally. And one of the things we worked on, I think, is so critical, and it's part of my own brand of politics, is bringing different people of different faiths together to talk these issues out. Because I think we don't talk enough about, we tend to silo ourselves and not talk to each other. And this is something that he took seriously. And he's a guy who, he cares deeply, and not just about his wife, but about the country as well. And this is something that I think that's something that we did a lot of, is just bringing people together, trying to find common ground. And that's going to be something that I definitely focus on in my congressional race and as a member of Congress as well.
Let me ask you a little bit about
Yeah.
the hopium in the 5th Congressional District. There's a lot of talk that we've heard that it's sort of like Orange County, California, around 2017, right before it flipped blue.
Mm-hmm.
The district is one of the few where Vice President Harris performed better than President Biden. The Cook Political Report says it's moving toward Democrats faster than any other district in the country. But for those of us who've been here for a long time, we've heard some of this before, and a Democrat never manages to get over the hump. Why is this different?
I think it's different because, first and foremost, we have not run a well-funded Democrat who also matches the district ideologically, and who knows and understands the core values of this district, really since 2014. And that was Irv Halter. And, he ran a great race, but, that was a very different time. That was a tough cycle for Democrats, for starters, and it wasn't winnable then. So I think first and foremost, just, putting together all the pieces of the puzzle to be a great candidate and someone who can win. And that is, working my ass off, meeting people where they are, listening to people, also raising the resources so that I can effectively communicate my message beyond the people I meet in person, but in the broader network of people. That's how you win, and actually being engaged in the community. And I just don't think we've been able, and also, honestly, this trend, the changes in this district have happened so fast. I understand why we haven't, right? This is really the first cycle that we can do it. Then if you look at 2018, which I think, if you look at past as prologue, a midterm cycle like this during a Trump administration in particular is a time in which you can have a better chance at flipping a district like this. And then doing the hard work and engaging with the community is how you keep it. And a great example, I think Orange County is a great example, but I just ran into Abigail Spanberger in Denver last week. And, she had a worse district. She was R+6, and Brat, who was the person she ran against, he had won his previous race by 15 points.
Right.
And I was like, damn, I got this in the bag. I don't know about that, but and now she's running for governor of Virginia and is probably going to win. So I think there's lots of examples out there. Orange County is definitely one of them, but Abigail Spanberger and her race and the way women in national security in particular do really connect in a special way with voters. And I think listen, my district has 100,000 service members and veterans in the district. It should be represented by a veteran and somebody who speaks their language and understands what they've been through. And Jeff Crank has not.
But let me follow up on that. The district has never had a military associated person representing them, as far as I can remember. I mean,
it did 46 years ago.
Was that before Joel Heffley?
It's like, before Joel Heffley, yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, you don't count Doug Lamborn, an apparatus of the defense industry, as a military adjacent person. Yeah.
No, not as someone who's actually served in the way that I've served. Yes.
Well, so it's really interesting. I mean, Colorado Springs has certainly undergone a lot of changes, right? Like a lot of Democrats are elected from the state legislature in seats in the Springs that never had before. You have an unaffiliated immigrant mayor in Yemi Mobolade, defeating sort of Colorado Springs institution Wayne Williams
with 58% of the vote.
And it wasn't particularly close.
Right. Yeah.
It's really good point.
Yeah.
And, 100,000 more registered unaffiliated voters than Republicans in the district right now, plus the 100,000 service members, or I'm sure there's some overlap there that you mentioned. But still, Jeff Crank won last time by 14 points. So if I'm hearing you right, it's a combination of the backlash to Trump, which we discussed before you got on here in a different segment. The special election victories that Democrats are having across the country right now are enormous, right?
Yeah.
Your resource advantage. Can you spill a little bit on how the fundraising is going for the listeners?
Yeah. I'm closing in on 900. August is notoriously terrible.
It's the worst.
It's been just brutal.
It's a slog.
I'm closing in on 900,000 now. We're going to be
great.
we're going to be over $1 million by the end of the quarter. And I mean, Crank has raised a little over 500. He had just under 500 cash on hand. So I raised more at my launch than he has raised all year. We'll see how he does in Q3, but I'm sure his August sucked too. And I think when I make my argument to most, there's three pillars. There are three-legged stool, if you will. You have the trends and the changes, and also the fact that this is a midterm year. And at one point I didn't know, but I think is important, is college attainability in this district has gone from 35% to 45% over the last decade.
I didn't know that.
We have higher college attainment than CD8, than CD3, than any of the other Republican held districts in the state. And those are the people who turn out for midterm elections. Those are the people that turn out. And then you have, I think Jeff Crank is a uniquely vulnerable incumbent. We can talk about all the reasons why. And then the third piece is sort of what we already talked about. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to running a successful congressional campaign. And I'm hitting every mark, and I will continue to hit every mark.
So maybe this is a stereotype, so correct me if I'm wrong about this, but like it seems like this district, among fewer and fewer, still has like some old school Romney Republicans that are not so MAGA. Like they're not like all Trumpy, right?
Right.
Which feels like a Crank mismatch because all he's doing is shining this guy's boots.
Right.
But folks who are not MAGA, they've still been reliably voting for Republicans for decades, right?
Yeah. And what we need to provide them, though, is an alternative that actually meets them. And it's sort of funny you say Romney Republicans, because I had a meeting with Amy Walter at Cook Political a couple of weeks ago. And she's like, if you could bring anyone into the district to campaign with you, no questions asked, no nothing, who would it be? And I was like, Mitt Romney.
Okay, so what's your message to these sort of like more traditional non-MAGA Republicans? Because you're going to need to win at least some of them if you're going to win the district.
My message is, first of all, I sometimes feel like I'm a little bit of a Democrat without a home too. I am, for sure, I care deeply about fiscal responsibility. And what I find fascinating is that the big, beautiful, ugly, whatever we want to call it, it's so fiscally unconservative. It's the opposite of conservative. And saddling our kids and our grandkids with debt that is honestly unsustainable, and that it's irresponsible, it's immoral, and it's not conservative. So that's one piece in particular. And I think old school Romney Republicans, to your point, are aligned with me. I align with them. I understand. And it's also gotten to a point, this is a little wonky, but the second biggest line item, when you think about member of Congress, your job, good steward of taxpayer dollars, the second biggest line item right now in the federal budget is interest on the debt. And we can't afford to have good programs that are moving this country forward, that are getting people into a place where they feel like they can access the American dream, where they feel like government is working for them, if we're spending all our money on interest on the debt. And this bill just made that worse. I think the other piece, that this isn't necessarily political, but I think most Republicans, independents, and Democrats understand. I think what's the biggest problem our country's facing right now, and that El Paso County also is facing, is income and wealth inequality. And it's dividing us. And we are putting us in silos and creating an environment where that's completely divisive. And we need to focus on building out and having policies that actually build out a better middle class, a more robust middle class, to bring our country together again and to bring my community together again. And those things resonate, I think, and I can talk about, where I'm at on immigration and some other areas where I probably am not quite aligned with the far left side of the Democratic Party, where in the end, most of the country's in the middle, most of my district's in the middle, and that's where I am too.
Anybody who's been involved in politics professionally, I think at some point thinks about what they would do different if they were the candidate, if they, or maybe what they even might do the same. Is there anything from your previous experience that you've been thinking about as you've been a candidate where you were like, oh, yeah, I'm not going to do this like so-and-so did it, or I'm going to do something different?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus.
No, right.
But I will say, listen, I've seen the good and the bad and the ugly of Washington. There's definitely a lot of things I would do differently. I think first and foremost, I believe, I think one of the things I've seen in government overall that drives me crazy is a lack of good leadership and management. And I learned how to lead and manage in the Army. And they really train lieutenants and junior officers the basic core principles of how to lead by example and how to treat your people with dignity and respect and demonstrate that you care about them not only as professionals, but as people. And I'm a big believer that when everyone's rowing in the same direction and everyone knows and understands the mission and a mission-driven environment, and everyone feels invested in that mission, we perform better, teams perform better. And so that's been a core thing of me in my staff capacity and leadership roles in government. And I'm trying to take that into my candidacy as well. And that I want all my constituents to know I care about them deeply, but also everyone who works around me. We all need to be very focused on the mission and feel invested in it, because I think we will perform better that way. And I think government would perform better. So we need more. And this is why I think people who have a service background, who have served in the military before, are effective members of Congress, effective leaders in government, because they know that and they know and understand how to make things work and how to get shit done.
Is there anything that surprised you thus far as a candidate that you were like, oh, I didn't think I'd feel like this, or I didn't think I'd have to do this much, or is this kind of how you thought it would go?
Definitely a lot of surprises. I've only worked on the official side before. I've never really worked loosely with campaigns, but not like this. So there's been a lot in terms of the way certain components of fundraising work, all sorts of stuff. But one thing, and I've said this, I always thought that being a staffer would make me a better principal and a better candidate. And I think that's true. I now realize that being a candidate before or would have made me a better staffer, because it's hard. It's really hard to put yourself out there and to always be on and to, I love it. And I'm excited about it. And I'm excited about what I can do and how I can serve my community. But it's a new challenge. And I'm learning something. This is my first podcast, as we talked about. Like I'm doing some new shit every day. And so, I don't know if there's any one thing in particular that I can think of right at this moment, but there's been a lot of lessons learned where I'm like, okay, that's the way we do this. For sure, components of fundraising that I just didn't understand how it all worked. I still don't really get how digital fundraising works, but
I don't understand it all. But
a lot of it works like this. Somebody sends out a bunch of text with your picture on it and then makes money and then puts it in their pocket. That's the
I have none of that
unfortunate. Yeah. Well, so let's talk some shit about Jeff Crank. So
okay.
Jeff Crank has voted with Donald Trump and Lauren Boebert nearly 100% of the time. He voted for the big, beautiful bullshit bill that cuts Medicaid and food assistance and harms veterans and does all sorts of horrible, nasty stuff. He defended Mike Waltz after that classified information leaked on Signal. Remember that? Feels like forever ago.
Yeah. He loves Pete Hegseth, by the way.
He loves Pete Hegseth?
Loves Pete Hegseth. And by the way, veterans are not on board with him.
Okay, so Of those or others, if you were Jeff Crank, which one of these votes or positions or modes would you be most worried about now that he has a very legitimate challenger in you?
Well, I think first of all, he voted in committee. He didn't on the floor, but he voted to sell off public lands. And that is one where Jeff Hurd actually voted differently from Jeff Crank.
Right.
So listen, moderating themselves on the Jeff Hurd is moderating himself on the margins, but public lands are a critical and important part of the Colorado lived experience, and people will not forget that. And the economy, exactly, indeed. So I think for sure that on a broader level, I would say for sure the vote on the big beautiful bill. I think all Republicans are going to be paying a very hefty price for that, because ultimately people voted for this administration, and I believe voted for Jeff Crank to create a better, more affordable life. When I look here, what we're dealing with in Colorado Springs and El Paso County, we are short 25,000 homes. Many of those probably need to be in the affordable housing category. People are barely getting by in terms of their health insurance and groceries, and none of that is going down. It's only going up. So I would be deeply concerned about that, because I actually am going to focus on things that are actually going to make life better for the community and make things more affordable, and focus on actual solutions, not just, honestly, I don't get it. Just he basically puts party politics over the people of his district.
And until now, that was a fairly safe bet for a guy from this district, but we're hoping you can change that. I want to ask you a little bit about, you mentioned the now home of multiple military installations in Colorado Springs and El Paso County, including Space Command. Keeping Space Command in Colorado seems to be one of the very rare issues on which our entire congressional delegation actually agrees. What would you do to keep Space Command in Colorado if you were in Congress?
Well, I do more than just send a letter to Donald Trump. We need to talk with all of our partners, right? It needs to be military partners, civilian sector partners, government partners, the private sector. We have now here in Colorado Springs a de facto business community that very much supports Space Command and its mission. And what people don't realize is that if you move Space Command to Huntsville, Alabama, half of the people who work for Space Command are civilian. They're not going to Huntsville, Alabama. They've made clear that they're not going to Huntsville. So you are then basically creating a massive brain drain in an entity that is actually quite specialized and has quite specialized knowledge. And you cannot effectively do that. You cannot run an effective entity in Huntsville given those changes. So I think the problem is we need to get, once again, my brand of politics, get everyone together, whether Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. Everyone should be focused on one core mission. That's keeping Space Command here because it makes the most sense. And it's best for our country and for our national security and for the Space Command's success overall. We should all be focused on that.
Let me ask you about immigration. You've said President Biden was too slow to close the border, but you've also called Trump's deportation measures immoral and illegal.
Yep.
Where do you think Democrats need to be on this issue, both to win elections, but also just to have a workable system in this country?
I do think we need to, there's been my biggest frustration is that immigration has just become so politicized. Any effort that we've made that's bipartisan, that's rational, that does shut down the border or at least bring it, slow down illegal immigration, and then comes up with different pathway to citizenship, whatever you want to say, that recognizes the reality of that we have all these people here and we've got to deal with the immigrants that we have here, has been shut down just to score political points. People know that. Voters know that. They're sick of it. They're sick of Republicans politicizing it, and they're sick of Democrats politicizing it. So I'm hopeful if we elect more people like me, we can actually get something done that makes sense for our country. I do think that the Biden administration was way too slow, did too little too late on the border and border security. And I do think, though, that, what's happening right now with the ICE raids and deportations, my favorite, one of the things that I think makes America great already is adherence to the rule of law. Right. We have rule of law. And right now, what's happening is not just immoral and incompetent, but it's lawless. And we need to actually have a plan on how to, we were told they were only going to remove illegal immigrants who are criminals. That is absolutely not what's happening. So
no, they're going to nab
yeah.
people at their immigration hearings in courtrooms and
who are
ripping them
actually
apart from
trying
their
to do the
families.
right thing. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And, I think all voters, no matter what you have behind your name, know and understand that is immoral and it's inhuman and people don't like it. So we need to start engaging in a more strategic way on this in both parties for sure.
So one thing we're hearing a lot from Democrats and progressives and the base and pundits and everybody in between, including us, we've got plenty of criticism for the blue team on this show, is that Democrats aren't really fighting hard enough against Trump right now. But honestly, including us, the ones who complain about it aren't really offering any substantive ideas on what Democrats should be doing differently. So let's ask you, if you were in Congress right now, what would you be doing to stop the most harmful parts of Trump's agenda?
I think, first of all, people forget one of the core things is two core things on Congress: power of the purse and oversight. And we are not seeing enough oversight of the lawlessness and the immoral and the incompetence, Doge incompetence. I just cannot believe we allowed that to go on.
Yeah.
And it's impacted so many people in my district, and there's no check on it. And then in terms of the power of the purse, and I've sort of already spoken to this because I just think that the big, beautiful bill is wholly incompetent and also unconservative. We need to get our fiscal house in order. And I would focus on, I'm not a big fan of bloated spending, but also not a fan of bloated tax cuts. The tax cuts in that bill, along with tariffs, are ultimately regressive and ultimately increase the income inequality and income gap in our country. We need to have tax cuts and tax policy that hits, that creates more fairness and creates a structure where the beneficiaries of those tax cuts is truly the middle class, not the wealthiest, because the wealthiest can afford additional to pay extra taxes.
They're doing great.
And then when we're going through, yes, they're amazing. And you look at also some of the provisions of that bill are going to keep Amazon and other huge corporations in a place where they're basically paying no taxes. And I think anyone understands that the innate unfairness of that. So I'd take a very close look at our tax policy and make sure it's more progressive, not regressive. Focus on making cuts where, of course, there's fraud, waste, and abuse in government, but let's do it in a thoughtful way and make spending cuts in a way that actually works and works for the American people and makes the American people's lives better.
Well, let's do a little crystal ball looking into. That was a terrible sentence.
Let's look into the crystal ball a little bit, Jessica. Try that.
I love that. Fortune telling.
Let's move ahead to January 2027. You're in office. You're the first Democrat to get elected here. What's the thing that you would want to accomplish in your first year or two where your voters in Colorado Springs are saying, I'm glad we did that. That was a good bet.
It's interesting. Couple things. Two things that come top of mind. I think first, I've spent most of my career in the Army and then at USAA working with and around Republicans. I'm pretty comfortable in that space. And what I found fascinating when I was working on the Hill is how siloed people become, and they don't really, it's a collegial body. It's supposed to be a collegial body. And yet not enough, I don't see enough Democrats, Republicans sitting down, breaking bread, having lunch, drinks, coffee, whatever. And so I would definitely make an effort. I'm not saying it never happens, but I don't think it happens enough. And we've got to get out of our echo chambers on both sides of the aisle. And so definitely something I would be focused on is sitting down, breaking bread, talking to Republicans who I know I can work with. There's a few of them up there still. And starting to talk about rational solutions and things we can do together. The other thing is, and this is where I really think my candidacy and the way I'm running is going to make a difference in this community, is that Doug Lamborn and now Jeff Crank basically were not engaged in the community. And I think that's how they managed to get away with it, but they're not, and part of that is that they're not then putting forward policies that reflect what the community needs. So I'm going to be out and about, hearing from the community, hearing about their issues, identifying where there are federal, not a lot of issues are state and local, but identifying issues that there can be where there's a federal nexus and where I can provide a solution or a response. I'm going to be doing town halls. I'm going to be talking to people who disagree with me. It sounds crazy, but actually I think it's a pretty important idea is that I understand where people are coming from. And I think the more you do that and the more you have those tough, interesting, engaged conversations, the more effective you can be as a leader.
If we're looking back in January 2027 on the election that had just passed, what do you think you'll be saying about why you won? What was the story? What happened? What changed? What put you over the hump?
I worked hard. I worked my ass off. I cared about my community. I'm part of Team Normal, and we all need to focus on being part of Team Normal again. Because politics have become too, totally, the interest groups have ruled the left and the right, and we've got to stop. We've got to be responsive to our constituents. And I think that if I'm planning to run a race in which I'm as responsive to the members of my community, and that's how you win races, along with being able to effectively communicate that with resources.
Well, we have really enjoyed talking to you, and somehow we are already at time, but let us know, where can people find you? How can they contribute? What's your website? What social media platforms are you on?
Yes,
where can
I'm
our
on all the
listeners go
things
help?
other than TikTok. Killin, well, my website is killinforcolorado.com, KILLINFOR, Colorado.com. You can find me on Twitter /X, Instagram, Facebook. I think we're setting up a YouTube channel shortly. I think that's it. Did I miss anything? Okay.
That's awesome. Well, please, listeners, go and find Jessica Killin at killinforcolorado.com and on all the interwebs except for TikTok. I don't go there either. Jessica Killin, Democratic candidate for Colorado's 5th Congressional District and really, really hopeful next congressperson from Colorado's 5th Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us on the Get More Smarter podcast. It was awesome to talk to you, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. Would love to have everyone's support. Thanks.
All right, let's start with where we kind of left off in our previous episode about the special legislative session. Ended up going, let's see, 6 days.
I think it's worth just level setting and reminding listeners and new listeners, telling them for the first time, why did this happen?
This was because of the big, beautiful bullshit bill that Congress passed and President Trump signed in early July. Colorado's tax system is pegged to the federal tax system. So when they made a bunch of stupid cuts in order to fund tax cuts for rich people, it changed Colorado's budget and meant that a special session needed to be called to figure out what to do with a nearly $800 million budget hole.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. And so lawmakers did a couple of things. They changed 4 tax provisions affecting businesses and business owners. Republicans will say they raised taxes. What Democrats did is just sort of declined to put into effect the dumber cuts that were done by the big, beautiful bill.
Yeah, I mean, the reality of all this is like we went through this in 2010. Republicans, when the economy cratered and there was a real financial crisis that caused the state to cut the budget because the economy was not doing well, therefore tax revenues were down. By closing a bunch of loopholes, Republicans and conservative interest groups sued and lost because the legislature does, in fact, have the ability to close loopholes to raise revenue without violating Tabor, according to the court.
Right. So they did a couple of things. I won't bore you with the numbers, but essentially they got rid of a tax break for wealthy owners of pass-through businesses.
This is like as a result of the Trump tax cuts last time around. They got a big cut at the federal level. Therefore, to your point, they got a big cut at the state level. This closes that loophole and says, if you're making $500,000 a year or more, which was the income threshold for this, you no longer get a special tax cut. Sorry.
And you'll probably still be okay.
You're going to be fine.
Democrats also ended a tax break for insurance companies that essentially gave them a tax break for having employees in Colorado, but it turns out they don't really have that many employees in Colorado, so that was not necessary. Democrats also passed legislation to add Hong Kong, Ireland, Liechtenstein, Netherlands, and Singapore to the list of companies that corporations can't route their revenue through in order to escape taxes.
These are called so-called tax havens. Wife of the show, Brittany Pedersen, worked on this bill when she was in the state house a million years ago. So good to see that it's in effect, and they're adding more tax havens to the list of no, you can't fucking do that places to stash your money.
The Democrats also passed a bill to let the state sell up to $125 million in tax credits to large companies, which essentially lets them pay taxes earlier at a discount.
It's basically like prepaying your taxes for 80 cents on the dollar, yeah.
Right.
Which, like, I don't think this is something we can or should get in the habit of doing a lot, but, like,
No.
as a cobble together $1 billion strategy, seems to be an interesting piece of it.
Right. And then for the rest of I don't know what the all adds up to, a couple $100 million, Jared Polis was empowered to make a few more budget cuts in order to get us across the $800 million hole. Chasm. Is chasm good?
Chasm is more accurate than a hole, I would say.
Here's Denver 7 with a little more on what all went down in those 6 days. Governor Polis really stuck to the Democratic message of why this special session was necessary in comments after the session had ended.
Evans and the other Republicans from Colorado's House delegation voted to pass H.R. 1, a bill in Congress that only passed by one vote. Any of them could have stopped it. It increased the federal budget deficit by trillions of dollars and also created a deficit here in Colorado. They cost Colorado $1.2 billion. Today I signed a bill that rebalances Colorado's budget. I'm going to send Congressman Evans and the other members of our congressional delegation the signing pen I used to balance Colorado's budget, and I hope they use it to balance the federal budget. Congressman Gabe Evans and the other...
This, like, moron with the comment, like, immediately they're like, you've been in charge forever. You're the one who put $1 billion out of balance. No, we fucking weren't, you moron. You don't know how anything works at all. Like, just listen to the show. We explain it all for you.
Yeah, it's and as we mentioned last week, nobody in the media in Colorado was buying that narrative from Republicans.
No, but it's also, like, really good messaging from the governor to just be like, here's whose fault this is.
Right.
Yeah, and he's got the bully pulpit and he's using it. Good job. Good job on this one.
After 6 tense days under the Gold Dome, Colorado's special session wrapped up tonight. Thanks for joining us tonight on Denver 7 News at 5. I'm Micah Smith.
And I'm Jessica Porter. Glad you're with us. It was a week dominated by high-stakes negotiations and drama. Lawmakers wrestled with the state's budget shortfall, managing to find a way to close a nearly $800 million gap. They also sparred over the future of artificial intelligence regulations before punting on what would have been a first-in-the-nation push to regulate AI. And we witnessed a rarity, the potential political censure of a lawmaker who ultimately resigned while under fire. It has been a whirlwind stretch that will leave a lasting mark on Colorado politics.
And we start tonight with that partisan fight over the removal of a now former representative, Ryan Armagost. Denver 7's Brandon Richard is live at the state capitol. Brandon, heated words today from both sides of the aisle about Armagost.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's tense moments in the House chamber this afternoon, leading the Republican leader to storm out of the chamber. And there's been a big partisan divide, in fact, throughout these last 6 days of the special session. Lawmakers gave final approval to their last batch of bills aimed at addressing the $783 million budget gap. The Democratic majority strategy focused on ending tax breaks, dipping into state reserves, and cutting spending.
I mean, we came in here to fix a $1 billion hole that was blown in our budget by federal Republicans.
They got little help from Republicans who accused Democrats of raising taxes.
We were here to cut, and we ended up spending.
The special session wasn't just about the budget. The governor asked lawmakers to look at changing Colorado's first-in-the-nation AI law after the tech industry and business leaders expressed concerns. But in a stunning announcement, the Senate Majority Leader said a deal that had been reached had suddenly collapsed.
So as you heard there from Denver 7, Republicans somehow managed to leave the special session with a negative spotlight on themselves because of a debate over the resolution condemning now former Representative Ryan Armagost.
All they had to do was go in there and say whatever the majority is doing is bad. It's bad to close tax loopholes. It's bad to cut programs. It's bad to cut services. You're doing it wrong. And then they could have like won the narrative on it.
I mean, it'd be disingenuous, but yeah,
Sure.
That's the easy. It's not rocket surgery. That's
the move on the board, right? What'd they do instead?
Well, instead they decided to debate this resolution condemning former Rep. Ryan Armagost, even though every Republican but 2 voted for it. It was baffling. I don't know why they did this. State Rep Ken Dildo DeGraff called it a lynching because, of course he did.
Jesus Christ.
And then House Minority Leader Rose Puglisi demonstrated why nobody takes her serious as a leader. This is ridiculous.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are 2 issues here, and I want to address the first one first. The first is to Representative Zokai. I do not believe the behavior that was exhibited was right. And I have seen degrading behavior from both sides of the aisle since I have been here.
Step 1, both sides.
I have been here. And I think we must do better as an institution to preserve the integrity of this institution. We should absolutely
then go to 30,000 foot, zoom out for the institution.
We need to commit to doing that for the integrity of the institution and for the people we serve.
Oh, this is for the people.
And so if there's an apology you're looking for from me, I am sorry that this happened to you.
Oh, close.
This happened to you.
And I
almost a real apology.
Yeah.
Not quite.
Swing and a miss.
The challenges to my character.
Oh, yeah, it's about you.
There it is.
I want to address that because
now I'm the real victim.
First, on
Lower this
April 11th,
microphone.
when the incident happened, I wasn't here that day. I hardly ever take a day off, but I was excused for something that was court ordered. I had no choice. I could not be here on April 11th.
No one cares.
April 14th, I came back to the chamber. We had a conversation. You and I had a conversation. I didn't see the signal chat. You don't have to believe me. I am telling you, I didn't see the signal chat. I did not know.
I didn't see the tweet. I have no comment on the tweet.
I did not know. And I committed to trying to find out who posted the picture on the internet. Then later, I realized I was told, still have never read it.
Why haven't you read it?
Unfucking believable. There's the biggest lie in the entire bullshit spiel, isn't it?
Your leadership. And I told her it was Representative Armagost. And I'm sorry that she had bills with Representative Armagost that was more important than your safety.
Yeah, fuck that shit.
My integrity, my character has been assaulted. And I have the right to defend myself.
All right, So what she's saying is that
Jesus Christ,
because people were critical of her for not doing anything to police her own caucus, she's the victim, and everyone.
And how fucking dare you criticize me for not handling my caucus members who were doing horrible things? Remember, for those of you who weren't following the story, this was because Armagost took a disgusting creep shot, a picture, surreptitiously, of Representative Zokai, sent it to some fucking signal chat full of ghouls. They all made racist, sexist, and terrible comments about her, sexualizing her, diminishing her in unspeakable ways. This then jumped to Twitter, where the feeding frenzy was about as bad as it can be, led to bomb threats at Representative Zokai's kids' schools. And this one has the nerve to make herself the fucking victim here? What a joke.
We've talked a lot about how Puglisi is not able to control her own members, has no idea what she's doing in the caucus. And this is another example of why. None of these things are leadership. All you had to do was say, I'm sorry. It's not okay what they did.
This guy resigned. He's out the door. Right. He's on the way to fucking Arizona. Under the wheels, man. That's the move. It's also the right thing to do.
Right. And the easiest thing to do. But instead, they did all this, and Puglisi stormed out after that speech, and then the after action media reports were mostly about that. I mean, they're just, God, they're dumb.
Trying to make herself the victim here is like an all-timer. Like that is
Yeah.
like that is the most cynical thing I've seen in a very long time.
Yeah, that wasn't the only weird comment in those 6 days from Republicans, which brings us to one of our regular features, legislating with crayons. The good news for you, our listeners, is that we have so much audio to share from people who are just not serious. Republican, they're not serious people. For example, I'll give you a proposal that Representative Scott Bottoms and Senator Linda Zamora Wilson put forward. They wanted to do an amendment that would take the proceeds from the sale of fetal harvesting and reimburse the state somehow. The fetal harvesting isn't happening, but
Right, I was going to say, is that a thing that happens?
I reimburse the state for what? I don't get how that would work. But
This is like one of those like work backwards from the conclusion ideas where it's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to like make an amendment about fetal harvesting and how can we get people to vote on it? Because they think it's like a big trap, right? That's
Right,
the whole point
right.
of this.
and it just went nowhere, as did this proposal from Ken Dildo DeGraff, arguing that we should do genetic identification of post-abortion remains in order to identify the responsible male to repay the state. Again, I don't know how, but
What?
Yeah.
Are we playing this clip? And through the magic
should
of
be
the internet.
genetically tested, and they should be paternally identified, and there should be paternal remuneration to the state for the procedure.
Huh?
I think that is only fair. I think that would be a free market suppression. You know, it's like,
Oh, Jesus Christ.
just no, yeah.
This is like fetal harvesting plus dad's rights bullshit plus state budget cut equals bad idea.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Here's DeGraff talking to Free State Colorado about what he thinks all this is about in the bigger picture.
Businesses. So ultimately, I don't know why they don't want any businesses to remain in Colorado, but that seems all part of their rewilding, aka depeopling of Colorado. So get rid of the businesses, you'll get rid of the people, and then they'll have their little wolf sanctuary. I don't know. It's all insanity.
Wait, so the conspiracy theory is that Democrats are trying to remove, so through abortions and wolf reintroduction and the destruction of the entire business community, Colorado will return to nature and be like life after people.
Yeah,
and this is the plan.
Yeah. And he figured it out.
This fucking guy is great, man. My God.
DeGraff also had a proposal that I think was satirical, but it's hard to tell with him, where he suggested that we let people pick up pennies and turn them into the state, but the pennies are actually going to be worth $6,000 instead of a cent. Or I'm sure that in his head this was really funny, but it made no sense.
My God.
But he wasn't alone. Here's State Senator Byron Pelton with a just genius idea.
Is he the guy that's not going to be governor?
No, but there's others that are not going to be governor.
The governor doesn't allow us to cut anything in on the budget. So right now, I'm waiting to hear my bill, which is a resolution that says any fee any tax increase has to go to the citizens. So and ask their permissions to increase taxes.
Oh.
So if they do an add back, which is
You mean so Tabor?
Yeah, what an interesting idea that we certainly don't already have.
Then the citizens, you'll have to get permission from the citizens. It's basically saying they have to abide by Tabor.
It's super Tabor.
Here's Representative Rebecca Kelty not really understanding the mathing.
Man, I love that you just like farmed this for like the most disqualifying clips imaginable. And it's like a right-wing group that put this online. That's very funny.
It wasn't hard.
And they did it on their very own.
They make cuts to the spending to the state. We're literally bleeding here. I know last session for the Republicans, we had over $900,000 worth of cuts that we proposed. They were denied, they were turned down, and now, we're back to the drawing board again. And I told them before, if we don't do something now, we're going to be back here again. And guess where we are? Not only that, but we're costing the taxpayers of Colorado $30,000 to $35,000 a day. For 6 days. So
it's a $800 million budget deficit, but thanks for your $900,000 proposal.
They had $900,000, bro. That could have gotten us 1/9 of the way there.
I told them this would happen. No, you didn't.
If you didn't cut my $900K.
Here's Representative Larry Don Suckla of Montezuma County trying to use his words.
Definitely has my favorite name. I'm going to get you, Suckla.
Idiotic policies that they are doing right now, and we have got to get back to being fiscally responsible, and I hope that we can get that done. I doubt that's going to be done here, but the Republicans are going to be pushing as hard as possible to get that done, and we need to start voting differently. We have got to start voting for Republicans and physically conservative people. Thank you.
Yeah, physically conservative.
Physically conservative is very funny, but my God, Republicans on the federal level are the reason why we're here right now, bud.
Well, but they're physically conservative over there, I guess. Here's Representative Jarvis Caldwell absolutely botching the Republican narrative.
This one doesn't have a timestamp either, sorry. But before we go to Jarvis Caldwell, I just want to point out that Scott Bottoms is absolutely in the shitter on this one.
Voter.
Maybe this is why they're always worried about who's in what bathroom, because they're bringing fucking camera equipment in there.
Thank you very much. Keep up the fight. Well, I'm here with Representative Jarvis Caldwell to give us an update on the special session. Representative, what do people need to know?
Hey, I appreciate it very much, Brandon. So what you need to know is instead of looking at how we can save Coloradans money, what we're doing is trying to figure out how to raise revenue, which was a direct order by the governor himself, right? So we have a somewhere between $1.2 billion budget deficit after HR 1 passed, which is giving us a lot of relief. And
oops, you're not supposed to say that.
Is figuring out, okay, how can we make up that?
You're not supposed to say that the special session is because of the congressional
No,
budget
you're
bill.
supposed to say it's because the Democrats overspent, silly boy.
Yeah.
Try and stay on message.
You're not reading the memo. And then finally, here's Republican Representative Dusty Johnson with something that I imagine we're going to be playing again and again on the show.
Oh, great.
Claim HR 1 is misconstrued. It is an scapegoat.
It's an scapegoat.
She did not say a scapegoat.
Oh, she did.
Hold on. We're running it back.
So to blame HR 1 is misconstrued. It is an scapegoat.
No!
Because we don't want to take it.
These are not serious people.
I love
Don't
that
listen
so
to them.
much. A scapegoat?
If we weren't so physically responsible, we could avoid this scapegoat.
Again, this is something that like a right-wing loser put out ostensibly to like help bolster the GOP's image in Colorado.
God, they're
incredible
idiots.
stuff.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Governor Jared Polis and Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Insofar as this episode has been largely praiseworthy of the governor and largely critical of people who are lying about what he's done and had to do because of congressional federal action, this segment will not be that way.
No, it won't. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and President Trump fired Centers for Disease Control Director Susan Monterez less than a month into the job because she was not just rubber stamping RFK Jr.'s nonsensical ideas about vaccines. Here's Kyle Clark with 9 News on what Governor Jared Polis said.
The Centers for Disease Control is in shambles as Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. replaces science and scientists with conspiracy theories and his anti-vaccine agenda. But Democratic Governor Jared Polis is standing by his enthusiastic endorsement of Kennedy to continue leading America's health system. There's been a stream of resignations and firings at the CDC this week as medical leaders refuse to implement RFK Jr.'s various discredited ideas about vaccines and public health. Governor Polis was all in on RFK's nomination when it happened, said that he would be willing to take on big pharma and vaccine mandates. Today, our Marshall Zellinger asked the governor if, after this purge at the CDC and the rise of this anti-vax crusade, if he's still on board with RFK Jr.
Do you regret your vocal support of RFK Jr.?
Well, I try to work with anybody, as you know, Marshall, and I was glad that President Trump didn't put a pharmaceutical lobbyist in that position like he did last time. We hope to work on making America healthier, and we already got a SNAP waiver with regard to improving the quality of food available to our lowest income Coloradans and helping to end food deserts. So I've always been critical of his stance on vaccinations, which seem to be the crux of what this current issue is about.
In fact, RFK Jr.'s pseudoscience goes beyond his views on vaccines. Just this week, he said that he could diagnose children as he passed them in airports as being, quote, overburdened with mitochondrial challenges, adding, quote, I know what a healthy child is supposed to look like. The center.
I loved in that video, Mark Ferrandino, the
budget director,
director, is standing in the back behind Polis, like doing the Homer Simpson, trying to disappear into the wall.
Sorry, Mark, you're trapped, man.
Members of Colorado's congressional delegation, from Congressman DeGoose to Congresswoman Pedersen, and both of our senators criticized what's happening at the CDC for obvious reasons. What is Polis doing?
I don't know. Different. This seems to be a snare that our governor gets entangled in a lot. This RFK snare, and I don't quite understand why. He's not a anti-vaxxer. The governor was very front and center on encouraging people as much as possible to get vaccinated. He wasn't quite in the mandate camp that some other blue state governors were. So I understand that he's more of the persuade people to do this stuff instead of forcing them to do it camp ideologically. But there's no reason to praise RFK Jr.
No.
There's no reason to not
or
say,
to use "Make America Healthy." That pissed me off too. You don't need to use
slogan
the
airing is not particularly helpful. But look, we have a lot of love for the gov. We think he's done a lot of good things for the state. This is a place where we just fundamentally disagree with him, that he thinks, quite frankly, you need to appease members of this administration for fear of them coming into doing bad things to your state, when the opposite strategy, look at Pritzker, look at Newsom, look at some of these other blue state Democrats, forget her name, up in Maine, who punched him early on. The only way to beat a bully is to hit him back. It's not to try and appease them in any way.
Right. All right, let's talk a little bit more about dear leader Trump. The national park system in the United States is strained because roughly 1/5 of the country's 433 parks, according to the New York Times, are understaffed because of Trump administration cuts. 24% of permanent employees have been lost in Trump's terms thus far. Even so, Trump has directed all national parks to remain open, but that means that people aren't collecting. There aren't enough people to collect the fees for people coming into the parks. Bathrooms aren't getting clean. Tours aren't being run.
Here's a quote. It says, budget cuts and staff reductions have set our national parks on an unsustainable and dangerous path, said Phil Francis, a 40-year veteran of the Park Service and chair of the Coalition to Protect America's National Parks, an advocacy group of current and former national park employees. Some of the impacts of the staff cuts are visible to the public, but many are not yet, and all of this is only going to get worse.
Trump has not yet even nominated someone to run the National Park Service.
Right, because Doug Burgum is putting 4 teenagers in a fucking trench coat or AI in charge of every part of his department.
I like the trench coat idea. They're all wobbly and it's an adult-sized person. A spokeswoman for the Interior Department really summed things up inadvertently well. Someone named Aubrey Spady said of the Times reporting that it was erroneous, though she wouldn't mention any specifics. She said, quote, staffing levels and operations at our national parks this summer are on par with previous years.
On par. What a fucking wiggly word. On par. Right. Is that a birdie? Is that a double bogey? How on par are we?
If on par means a quarter less staffing, then yes, you're right.
There is no definition of on par that is 25% variance.
No. They don't even know what to say anymore. They're just like, yeah, fake news.
They don't really care. I mean, they don't fucking give a shit. Like national parks, especially. Like, think about it. Like, what's the one federal agency besides like the EPA, which is getting hollowed out, besides the Department of Education, which is getting hollowed out, besides the Smithsonian, which is getting hollowed out, that would be like most oppositional to like a Donald Trump agenda? It's the Park Service. So like just dismantling it piece by piece is obviously the plan. It's a Project 2025. We've talked about it a million times. And putting a creep like Doug Burgum in charge of it was also a huge fucking problem.
We've also talked in recent episodes about the price increases in the United States, the coming price increases because of tariffs and things like that. Here's another one you're going to see as soon as today on Friday, the day we're recording, because online shopping is about to get a lot more expensive. Trump has erased an exemption that allows low-cost imports to enter the country duty-free.
This is like your fast fashion, like your Sheins, for instance, like your $11 dresses from China.
Right. Those prices are going to go up 10 to 50%.
Oh, that's a lot.
Etsy, the company that the website where you can sell stuff that you make, they're flat out telling people that you should raise your prices 50% or so on the front end in order to cover your additional shipping costs. People are not going to be happy about this.
No, and like I don't understand what they thought was going to happen. Like, this is all very intentional. Like, they know it's slow rolling. They're closing these loopholes. People are telling them, well, if you do that, all this stuff's going to get more expensive. They're going to try and blame Democrats somehow. I don't think it's going to work. People voted for this idiot because they thought, well, he's a buffoon and a racist and a monster, but he'll probably make things cheaper. Now he's making them more expensive.
Right. And his response is to say, well, we're bringing in all this money in tariffs, but to who? No one's seeing it.
I don't know. Like, I was thinking the other day, I'm not sure how that part works. Quite frankly, like, who did they write a check to? Is it the IRS? Is it this? They said they were going to come up with it's just to Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, if he's just pocketing the tariff money, that would make the most sense out of any arrangement of all this stuff. But I just think, like, ultimately, like, it's not an uninteresting idea to, like, do a temporary sort of tariff type sales tax thing to, like, get the revenue of the federal government into a better position. But the problem is they increased the debt ceiling $5 trillion. They just cut taxes for the richest people in the world again. They just extended the last Trump taxes again. So it doesn't pan out to be net positive. And then, of course, they cut Medicaid by $1 billion all the way. Like, so I don't understand how this pencils in any conceivable way other than everybody is going to pay more money for the same shit. That money is going to go to the government, and Donald Trump, a Republican president, is selling this as a good thing.
Right. Right.
Very strange stuff.
Yes.
And of course, like, tariffs and sales taxes are like obscenely regressive, whereas income taxes and wealth taxes are progressive, and that's why they're doing the one and not the other.
Right. This all leads us to our newish segment where we feature an example or examples of people calling out the nonsense from the Trump administration. You may have read or seen something about the fact that Trump is trying to fire Lisa Cook of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. He can't actually do that.
The only black woman on the board. I just want to point that out in case anybody was wondering. Yes, he has no authority to do this, of course, but because he's Donald Trump, he thinks he's just
Cook for
in charge of
resisting,
everything.
though.
Yeah, she's suing him, right?
Yep, she's suing. She says, quote, President Trump purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law, and he has no authority to do so. I will not resign. I will continue to carry out my duties to help the American economy, as I have been doing since 2022.
Hell yeah, way to go. The only way to beat these freaks is to punch them in the face and fight back. That's it.
Yep.
You can't take it lying down. You can't slink away. Stand up, fight back. And like, maybe she'll win, maybe she'll lose, but you don't win by not trying.
That's right. And we've also seen very direct comments from members of or leaders in the CDC who resigned following the firing of the less than 1 month old boss. The Washington Post collected some of those comments, and they're pretty good.
Dimitri Daskalakis. I'm an infectious disease doctor, and I was
Great
the director
haircut.
of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases.
I'm Dan Jernigan.
I was, until recently, the director of the National Center for Emerging and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases at CDC.
I'm Dr. Howery. I was the chief medical officer who turned in a resignation yesterday.
I tendered my resignation because I could not be a part of the weaponization of public health and CDC.
We really think that the use of the scientific information as evidence to help the decision-making with vaccines is critical. And if that is not the approach that is being taken, then Americans are not getting what they need from us.
I'm a scientist. I think it's okay to question, but you shouldn't know what your recommendation is going to be before you have the data. We should always be questioning, but you shouldn't have a preconceived idea before you have the data.
I fear that without scientific leadership, and what I mean by that is the director of CDC, there will be decisions made around vaccines that are based on pre-decided ideas rather than based on presentation of high quality science and discussion.
I think there is a scientific process that we need to be following, and there is the ethical responsibility of how we handle.
As we saw the day unfold with Susan, realizing that we potentially would not have such a scientific leader anymore, that we would then be sort of in an unfettered situation where undue influence and ideology would drive the science. That is where my line is.
The three of us are committed. We love CDC. We didn't want to leave, but we had to.
What do you think about this? What do you think about the professional class resigning instead of trying to slow things down, jam up the works, redirect the ship from inside by sticking around?
I feel a little differently about this just because these are people with scientific backgrounds who, for their entire careers, they would be ethically opposed to ignoring science. And this sort of goes against their fundamental training and experience. I understand why that would be hard for them to continue forward. And, they may have realized there's not much they can do anyway, because if they're going to fire a Republican who was put forward by Trump less than a month into her job, they're not going to listen to anybody else.
I feel that. I'm not in that position, so it's easier for me to say than it is for them to do or not do. But I think I tend to side with the stick it out. You can't fire me. I'm going to stay here and do my job until I'm dragged out one way or another, because the health of the nation is so important. And the people that they're just going to be replaced by conspiracy theorists and toadies and freaks and political actors.
That may be why they did this then, just to get ahead of their own firings, probably to say, you're not going to fire me. Here's why I'm quitting. Yeah.
They are just the speed and depth to which they have just utterly remade the entire country in a very short amount of time is fucking frightening.
You say this a lot, and I think it's worth repeating here. If you were trying to destroy a country on purpose, what else would you be doing?
What would you be doing differently? Yeah. If your goal was the annihilation of the United States of America as we know it, what actions would you be taking that are different than what this administration is doing? I can't think of many.
No. All right, let's do a couple of quick hits and then we'll roll out of here. The bread sandwich, Congressman Jeff Hurd from the 3rd Congressional District, continues to not show his face, which is sort of understandable after he talked a lot for months about opposing Medicaid cuts and then voting twice for Medicaid cuts. Here's KSJD Radio in the Four Corners region.
I just want to say that KSJD is the exact call sign that my hand produces if I just slam the keyboard.
KSJD Local News, I'm Gail Binkley. People who came to Dolores on Wednesday night to see 3rd District Congressman Jeff Hurd had to make do with asking questions of the Montezuma County Commissioners instead. Commission Chair Jim Candelaria told the crowd of about 120 that he'd just been notified that Hurd would not attend because the aide with whom he was traveling had a medical emergency.
Right.
Several onlookers voiced skepticism, noting that an aide to Hurd was also a no-show at a scheduled town hall in Dolores in February.
Oof.
Candelaria said he would convey to Hurd that local people want a town hall. This meeting was only to be a sit-down between the commissioners and the congressman. The commissioners took audience questions for about an hour.
Why the fuck isn't Jeff Hurd here?
Of recent drastic cuts to federal funding for things such as Medicaid, public lands agencies, and food banks, One person said, quote, "We are in distress," to which Commissioner Kent Lindsay responded, quote, "We're in distress too." The board said they are waiting to see how decisions made in a recent special session of the Colorado legislature will affect counties.
Bad.
Colorado is seeking to deal with a roughly $800 million budget shortfall, some of that the result of federal budget cuts. Candelaria told the audience, quote, "We're going to navigate the waters the best that we can." This is KSJD.
I just want to say I'd never heard of Gail Binkley or KSJD before, but my God, is that like the perfect person for the Western Slopes public radio station? Holy moly. Great
Jeff
job.
Hurd, what a goddamn coward. Like,
Just
not
a
only
disappointment, man. Just an absolutely crushing
but
disappointment.
not only refusing to show up at the town hall, but then making local elected officials
eat shit sandwiches on his
do
behalf.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then like
you asshole.
You can really only use the like staffer had a medical emergency bullshit once. Like
Right.
two's a little bit suspicious, man.
Jeff Hurd's grandmother's going to start dying a lot, I think.
Oh, God. No, it's the other one this time.
We've got some good news for you.
Finally.
Yeah.
What is it?
Starting with a big win for Democrats in Iowa. Here's ABC News.
In
Breaking news
Iowa?
in the closely watched election in Iowa, Democrats flipping a seat in the state Senate, and Jay O'Brien is in Washington with what this means for the GOP supermajority in that state. Good morning, Jay.
Yeah, Rebecca, good morning. This was a special election to fill a vacant Iowa State Senate seat. But this morning, Democrats across the country are celebrating, arguing it's a sign of things to come. Democrat Caitlin Dray beating Republican Christopher Prush by 11 points, in this case, just about 800 votes in a district that Donald Trump won easily in 2024, according to the latest data from local elections officials. The victory breaks a Republican supermajority in the Iowa State Senate, now forcing any of the governor's nominees to need to get one Democratic vote to get approved. And it's the second time this year a Democrat has flipped a seat in that chamber in a Trump-heavy district. The chair of the National Democratic Party this morning saying that the win shows Iowa voters rejecting President Trump's policies and is a sign of momentum ahead of the 2026 midterms, where control of Congress will be on the line. But Republicans are blaming the loss on low turnout. Just 7,600 votes were cast. Deborah.
Yeah. Okay. This is something that I think it would be scary for a person like Republican Senator Joni Ernst, who is up for re-election in 2026, but she bounced.
Yeah.
A few days later.
That whole thing about how she said we're all going to die one day, I'm sure she did a little internal polling, and found out that that wasn't a very popular thing to think.
No, and the fact that this Democrat won big in a Trump-carried district has got to freak her out.
Yeah.
As would the newest polling on the generic congressional ballot.
Yeah, we've got a poll from The Economist here, which is like a B to an A, according to 538. Generic congressional ballot, and to be clear, this is just between 18 and 29-year-olds, so that's not the whole thing. Democrats, 48%. Republicans, 22%. That's a 26-point banger. And this comes on the heels of a G. Elliott Morris poll for his excellent Substack Strength in Numbers that you should check out if you haven't already. That shows the overall generic congressional ballot. Democrats are +8 right now. And our friends at the Down Ballot, which is another great Substack that you should check out, the-downballot.com, went back and did a great podcast episode. We put it on our Blue Sky feed a couple days ago, where they took the average of all the special elections that have been happening so far, and there have been 35 of these things. So this is a pretty big pool of data since Trump was put back into office this January. The average Democratic overperformance, so the number above the typical outcome of any of these special elections, is 15 points. In 2017, which was the last time we had a Trump pre-midterm off year with special elections, so it's apples to apples, the average Democratic overperformance was 10.5, so that's 4.5 points lower than it is right now, and Democrats went on to win 40 new seats in the House of Representatives in 2018, making Nancy Pelosi the speaker. This is good news. All the caveats about whether or not we're allowed to actually have elections and count votes and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
Granted.
Yeah. Assuming everything stays, the country still exists, that's good news for Democrats. And finally, our gibberish of the week. Let's go back to the special session and listen to Montezuma County Republican Rep Larry Don Suckla talking about whatever this is.
Montezuma County really punching above their weight this episode.
He tells a story about how a bull impregnated a bunch of his cows, and he had to conduct 50 cow abortions.
Oh my God, are those legal?
I maybe
in Colorado they fucking are.
Yeah,
I can't think of a more Colorado thing than a cow abortion.
Why? Right, and this goes back again to what we were talking about earlier with Rose Puglisi. Why are you letting this dickhead talk?
Well, Jason, he's one out of 65 members of the House, and he has privileges just like everybody.
Yeah, but I mean, can't you just pull him aside and be like, "Listen, can you
just knock it the fuck off a little bit?
You need to stick to something we're actually discussing, please."
Yeah, that'd be good.
All right, that's it for us this week.
The Get More Smarter podcast is a production of ColoradoPolls.com and the Big Horn Company. Our hosts are me, Ian Silveri, and America's dad,
Jason Bay,
who managed to figure out how to engineer and produce this thing. Megan makes the video. Thanks, Megan. And does a bunch of other stuff, too. I do other stuff. I promise. Even though I have 2 kids and I'm really tired. Breakmaster Cylinder made the theme song. Get your shots while you still can. Protect your trans kids, your autistic kids, your immigrant kids, and any other kids in your life. Really. Also, release a fucking Epstein files, you creeps. Subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts if you got more smarter. It actually helps us a lot. Go to our YouTube channel and battle the trolls in the comments section. And also find us at getmoresmarter.com, where you can sign up for bonus content in our Substack. And please send all angry and non-angry rants to angerrants at getmoresmarter.com. Other shit to Ian at getmoresmarter.com, and other shit to Jason at getmoresmarter.com. Thank you so much to Jessica Killin for being our guest this week. And thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
We have a shitload of clips.
Yeah, good. Clips are good. People love clips. I love clips.
They're fucking hilarious.
Well, everything is terrible, so they may as well be hilarious.